Finally, finally, I have seen this movie. Guys, I have been wanting to see this movie for the longest time, ever since the trailer was released, and finally I have seen it. Guys, this is going to be my review for the last 5 years. Now, you guys know I was looking forward to this movie. If you guys saw my trailer reaction or you saw my February movie preview show, you guys know it's my most anticipated movie of February and one of my most anticipated movies the entire year. May I mind you guys, it is the only musical film we are getting for this year. So there is that. But there are many other reasons why I want to see this. I mean, the trailer looked absolutely amazing. I cannot tell you guys how many times I went back and watched that trailer. I cannot tell you guys how many times I watched the trailer. I'm like, I need to see this movie right now. I cannot tell you guys how many times I watched reviews. I just can't. There were so many times, countless times. The soundtrack was released this week, and I told myself I was not going to listen to any of the music, and I could not do that. I was too hyped for this movie, and with so much hype, I was kind of worried I was going to be disappointed. But overall, guys, what I think the last 5 years, absolutely fucking amazing. This movie is an absolute masterpiece. It is one of the best musicals I have seen probably in the last 3 years. Yeah, it is like Les Miserables and Into the Woods. Those were good, but this is better than both of those combined. Yeah, this is better than Les Miserables, and I'm gonna explain why this is better than that. There's something that this movie does that those two movies don't do, and I'm going to explain what that is. Now, I know you guys are going to say, what the hell are you talking about? You just saw the movie. You have no idea what you're talking about. I do know what I'm talking about because this movie did something that those two movies didn't, and I love that this movie did that. Let's get to the basic plot of the last 5 years. It's pretty simple overall. We have these two people, Jamie and Kathy. They were in a relationship, and they recently just got out of it. And basically, the movie's sort of like a study of why their relationship didn't work out. You know, the good things, the bad things, the relationship. And it's basically different events that happen in the relationships, both good and bad, and just to see what ended up happening to them and why it ended up so bad. And that's basically what the last 5 years is about. It's pretty simple story overall, not really too much else to it. And there's a lot more to it, though. There's a lot more else going on besides that. It's a pretty simple plot, but the other thing I must say is that when we go to Kathy's perspective, it is beginning to the end to the beginning, and when we go to Jamie's perspective, it is beginning to the end. So it is a little bit different than your typical movie musical. But this movie is anything but typical. There is nothing cliche about this movie. There is nothing that is lighthearted. I mean, there are some very lighthearted moments in this movie, but I'm going to get to what I mean by that. But where do I even begin with this movie? First of all, guys, if you guys don't know already, this is by far my favorite film of the year so far. This movie is going to end up on my top 10 list. I know that for a fact. I don't care what you guys say. This is going to end up on my top 10 list of the year. I don't know where it's going to end up, but it is going to be on there because I cannot just forget about this movie. I can't. This is not a movie I can forget about. And let me just explain why this movie is just so good. First of all, we have to get to the acting in this movie. This acting in the movie is not normal acting. It's not your normally structured movie either. Movies have many actors. This has two actors. Well, actually three. One that really doesn't do anything, and two that are there. The two main actors in this were absolutely fantastic. Anna Kendrick and Jeremy Jordan. When I found out they were being casted in this, I'm like, that is perfect casting because, well, first of all, a lot of things that go through people's heads when you hear musicals is that they think, okay, what credits do they have? Are they musically inclined? Can they do musicals? Should they be, should we trust them in this? And these two, Anna Kendrick was on Broadway when she was 12, and Jeremy Jordan is no stranger to Broadway. He was in Newsies, Bonnie and Clyde, tons of shit like that. And they both give amazing performances, but we're going to go by both of them. Anna Kendrick gives the best performance of her career in this movie. I don't care what you guys say. She did something that she's never done before, and that is something that she did. She gives so much in this movie. She gives the funniness and wit of Pitch Perfect mixed with the dramatic and, the dramaticness and, the heart that some of her other movies had. Like Cake, for example, which I did not like her character in that, but she does have that in this movie. And the thing about her character was just she was so real, and I love that about her character. the way her character was structured as well was just so well done, so fleshed out, so well done. She had so many funny moments, so many dramatic moments as well. She had me cracking up at points. She had me, crying at points. The second you meet her character is a very dramatic number called Still Hurting, which she did a fantastic job with. Absolutely fantastic job. And that's the other thing. Most of this movie is sung through. I didn't get to that, but I will get to that when we get to the music in the movie and things like that. But she did an absolutely fantastic job. She did everything perfectly, and just everything about her. I've said it before, she's one of the best actresses working today. Not only is she the hottest woman alive, there's that, but also the fact that she is a very talented actress, and man, can she sing. Wow. Everybody says that she's a terrible singer. No, she is an amazing singer. What she has to do in this movie is not easy to do, and I love that about her character. I love that about her in the movie. Her acting was amazing. She was just perfect. Um, and then you have Jeremy Jordan as Jamie, who he was having a blast with this movie. But Anna Kendrick was having just as much of a blast as well. He gets more of the fun numbers, and she gets more of the dramatic numbers. But he still gets very dramatic numbers, and she gets very fun numbers. It's equal for both of them, which I like about that. A lot of people are saying that Anna Kendrick isn't as fun. No, she does have some very fun numbers. In fact, some of her things that she did, some of her numbers were actually very, very funny. I definitely really enjoyed that. But again, guys, you have to look at this as just different events in their life. You have to think of it as that, and it works perfectly. And I think the one thing that works perfectly in this movie, the one thing that would not have made this movie work, the thing that would have made this movie a disaster, is if their chemistry was terrible. No, their chemistry is just real. It doesn't feel like movie chemistry. It just feels like a real couple. That's one of the things I loved about this movie, is just how real it felt. Everything about this movie felt real. Everything did. The funny moments felt well. The scenes where they're happy together, you're happy for them. The scenes where it's very emotional, you feel bad for them, and you feel very, very bad for them. I really want to talk about that, but their chemistry is some of the best movie chemistry I've seen in a very long time. By far the best movie chemistry of this year. They were absolutely fantastic together. Every single scene, just, and the thing I liked about their relationship, one of the things I thought was very well done, is they don't break up because of somebody cheating or somebody lying to them or just something cliche like that. They break up because of the way their lives are going. You see, Jamie's a very successful writer, while Kathy is sort of struggling in Broadway. She wants to be a Broadway actress, but she can never really get a good role. I mean, she ends up doing like cheap theater in like Ohio, which is terrible and miserable for her, and she really misses him. While he becomes very popular in books, he even has all these like the people are publishing his books. He gets his own publicist who Kathy gets jealous of, and I love about the relationship because it's something that really works in the movie, because Kathy starts to become not jealous of Jamie, but just like she feels like she is sort of like not what he deserves and things like that. And I like that about her character. One of the things I liked about the movie is that they actually blame themselves for their relationship ending and things that were happening to them. There's a scene where I don't want to spoil what happens, but Jamie is blaming himself for what happened with Kathy, because he feels that he became successful and everything. He's blaming himself for it, and he feels bad for them. One of the things I love about the movie is that they still love each other. They were in this together. They did whatever they could to stay together. And there's this great scene where Kathy feels completely neglected by Jamie, but the thing that's keeping her going is how much she loves him and his smile and things like that. And I love that about the movie. I just love the way they did that. It wasn't superficial. It was completely realistic. And it really makes you think about celebrities who date people that aren't famous. Just think about it. It really is very awkward for them. And Kathy and Jamie go through that. Jamie becomes a very successful writer, while Kathy is sort of just this struggling actress who's also a bartender. And it becomes very awkward for her because she feels like she's constantly in his shadow, and she's constantly getting questioned, and she's sick of it. And I love that about the movie. I love the movie did that. They handled that perfectly. The acting was just perfect in this movie. The only other person we can talk about is the person that played his publicist. She's barely in the movie. The girl that played Anna, Elise, she was good overall. Nothing really too much to say about her other than she was very good. The directing to this movie. Oh my god, the directing is perfect. Now, I will say something about the movie. Um, the guy that directed the movie, Richard LaGraven, Richard LaGravenese, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm assuming that I think that's how you pronounce it, Richard LaGravenese. He directed this movie, and he basically directed this thing perfectly. He did. The way he directed the way he directed this movie was perfect because one of the things I loved about Richard LaGravenese is that he was a genuine fan of the last 5 years. He was a fan of the Broadway musical. If you guys don't know, this is not a very well-known musical. It's a well-known musical to musical fans, but to other people, it's not like, what's the last 5 years? Like, they don't know. And he was a huge fan of it, so really a lot of that went into his directing. He was so passionate about this project, and you could tell how passionate he was. And the way he just turned this into a film. This could have been a disaster. It could have been. You could have made this into a film, and it could have been an absolute disaster. But no, it was absolutely fantastic. Masterful directing. Just complete perfect directing, complete perfect directing. Everything about it was spot on. Nothing felt like, oh, that didn't work. Nothing felt like that scene did not work. No, everything worked perfectly. Every single scene worked perfectly. His directing, the tone he wanted to portray. When the scenes are supposed to be funny, it feels funny. When it's supposed to be sad, it feels sad, and he just directed that perfectly. Amazing directing on his part. Great job. He also did the screenplay of this movie. Now let me explain some about the screenplay. 95% of this movie is singing. It is a sung through movie. The musical is sung through. One of the things that I like that I did not know about this movie is that they do have dialogue in there. There is actual spoken dialogue when there needs to be. It's only in there really when it needs to be, but I like that because it adds something to the movie. It adds their chemistry level, adds to their struggle that they're going through. Or, I mean, there are some scenes in this movie that are very hard to watch, and that's due in part to what Richard LaGravenese did in the screenplay. I like that he modernized it also because this is something where, yeah, you would want to modernize a story. Something like, Annie, of course, you wouldn't want to modernize. I had a whole rant about that. You guys think that I hate everything modern musical. No, I don't. If you want to modernize this movie, go ahead, because the whole point of this movie is to show that this could be any couple. Really. That's the point of this movie, is that this could be any couple. Any couple could go through this, and any couple could relate to this, really. If any couple's ever gone through this, they probably are going to relate to this. And the screenplay was just perfect to this movie. All the dialogue was great. There's some hilarious scenes, as I said, some scenes that had me cracking up, and that's due in part to the screenplay. The script was so great, and it just felt real. It didn't feel like dialogue. It felt real. The characters are singing songs, and you don't think anything of it. You just think of it as real, and I love that about the movie. That's how I wanted to feel. I didn't want to think of this as just dialogue being, people singing. No, it just feels real. Characters are talking, they suddenly start singing. One of the things that I liked that they did with that was how they had it so it was realistic. For example, there'd be parts where Jamie was at a party and the music would come from like a piano someone was playing, or a band or something like that. And I think that was actually very well done the way they did that, because it added to the realisticness of this movie. It just made you realize, why wouldn't they sing in a party? Why wouldn't they sing on an audition? Why wouldn't they do that? Why wouldn't they? It just felt so real, and I loved it about the movie. Something that the movie could have failed at and miserably, and it failed at that. It exceeded all my expectations perfectly with the screenplay. Just absolutely masterful directing, meticulous directing, and everything was perfect there. So, the score to this movie is just, oh my god, guys. I can listen to that soundtrack for 24 hours straight. I can listen to the soundtrack as many times as I want to. I can listen to the soundtrack, you could tell me listen to that soundtrack for a week and I would not care. The songs in this movie are so well done. Some of the best musical songs I have ever heard. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I've listened to other recordings of the last 5 years. I don't really like them. I'm going to be honest. I don't really like other recordings of the last 5 years. And it's not that they're bad. It's just I don't really like the other recordings. I don't like the original with Sherry Renee Scott and Norbert Leo Bus. I think they're good overall. I just don't really like it. And I think that's just compared to this, these voices are just so much better. And what they did to this, they modernized the soundtrack. They made the songs work more. And I love that about the movie. For example, there's a line in A Summer in Ohio where it was originally, I saw your book in a Borders in Kentucky, but of course Borders closed. And, Richard LaGravenese knew that. He's not stupid. So of course he changed the target. And it just works. The lines that were changed just works. It's not like, why do you change that? No, it just works. And there's no questioning of anything because it just works perfectly. And I love that. The score was perfect, and I cannot wait to listen to that soundtrack again. That soundtrack is just awesome. The cinematography to this movie. The moment the movie opened, the cinematography I knew was the best cinematography I have seen all year, and some of the best cinematography I've seen in a movie, in a musical film, in a very long time. There are such wide shots of the buildings and such beautiful shots. Anytime the movie will cut to another scene, they fade the camera out to this beautiful scenery. The scenery is beautiful in this movie. Absolutely gorgeous cinematography. I mean, you can just look at the cinematography. You could watch this movie with the sound off and it'd be amazing. It's one of those movies. You could watch this with the sound off and you'd just be astounded by how good the cinematography is. That's one of the things I loved about the cinematography of this movie, because it's such great shots, and I love that about the movie. Absolutely gorgeous cinematography. Loved it. The editing. A lot of people will say this editing is very, very weird. But again, guys, you have to think of it as just events in their life. Now, I will say, if you are not paying attention to this movie and you're not someone who likes to pay attention to movies, don't watch this movie, because you are going to get extremely confused. Because literally, here's what happens: it'll go from a Kathy scene to a Jamie scene. They are not going to connect. They're not going to, because Kathy's is at the end of the relationship, is the end of the beginning, and Jamie's is the beginning to the end. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to connect. But you have to think of it as just, this is how they're thinking. She's thinking of it as, where did this go wrong? He's thinking the beginning to the end because he's thinking of it that way. She's thinking the end to the beginning of it. Again, there's no questions of it. There's no questioning of why are they thinking of it that way, because you just go with it and it works. And I love that about the movie. I love that you just go with it and it works for me. Nothing, no questions of anything really there. I really have no problems at all with the editing, because the editing was perfect. And the movie went by so quickly, and I love that. Every single scene, and no scene feels rushed either. I'm gonna say that. No scene feels rushed. Every song is about a. I will say this. Every song is very lengthy. The songs are very long, and if you guys don't like to listen to songs that go on for a while, I could easily see someone who doesn't like musicals and be like, "Oh my God, that song went on forever." There's this wedding song. One of the things I love about this movie is the only time that they actually sing together. Now let me explain what I mean by sing together. There are scenes there's not one scene where they're not together. There's not one scene where you don't see a scene with them together. But there's only one time they actually sing on screen together, and that is at the end of the movie. I mean the midpoint of the movie where they get married, and I like that it was perfectly edited, because it's the midpoint. It's literally the halfway point of the movie, and it's perfect because it's when things start to get really bad for the relationship. And let me talk about that with the tones and things in this movie. This movie affected me. I'm gonna say this, guys, right now. This movie's gonna affect you. This movie has a lot of things that I did not know was gonna have. First of all, if you guys want to see a sexy movie, see this movie as well, because this movie has some very sexy sex scenes, definitely. I mean, this is honestly a lot. I heard the 50 Shades of Grey lacks that, and this has that. I mean, there are some sex scenes that are very sexy to look at. Anna Kendrick is, sexy woman and everything. But if you want to see if you want to see a date movie, don't I would not recommend this as a date movie, because it's gonna end terribly for you. It's gonna end miserably. You're gonna end up crying at this. And I will admit this, guys. Even if you don't think you're going to, you're gonna cry. You're gonna feel something after this movie. I did not feel like I was. I told myself I'm not gonna feel much about this movie, because I've never been in a relationship. I've never had any sort of like creative differences with a significant other, because I've never had something like that. I've never been in a relationship, guys, and I felt something with this movie. The end of the movie, it ends tragically. I'm saying this right now, guys. The ending of this movie is tragic. It's not happy. It is extremely tragic. When you find out why these two split apart and what exactly happened to them and why this happened, it is extremely tragic. And to see what it's left the two of them in, what's happened to them, it's so sad to see. And as I said, you want these two, you don't really want them together. You want them together in the scenes you see them in. The scenes you see them in, you see why they got together. You can see why they liked each other. But when you find out why they split up and, they're broken up and everything, you don't want them back together. When they're arguing, you're like, no, I don't want to see them together, because they just can't be together anymore. Their lives just got so in the way that they can't be together anymore. And I love that the movie illustrated that. It told that story so well. And now I know what you guys are going to say. If this wasn't a musical, you wouldn't have enjoyed it. No, guys, if this would have been a legit story, I still would have really enjoyed it, because it's such a fascinating story. It's such an interesting story. And it's something that I recommend you guys watch, definitely. If you guys have not seen this movie, please watch it. Rent it on iTunes, rent it on Amazon. I am so happy that they let people rent this, because This movie needs to be watched by tons of people. Definitely. This is a movie that I feel if a lot of people watch is going to become a classic. I really do. This movie to me, I think is going to become a classic. And you know how I know that? I know that for several reasons, first of all. I know that because, first of all, Anna Kendrick knows her stuff. I've watched interviews with her. She says that she loves classic musicals. And I could definitely see her influence with that. There's a parody with The Sound of Music. It's so funny. I don't want to get, there's like a scene where they parody musicals, and it's actually very funny, but they do it in such a subtle way. It's not like they just throw in your face, hey, we're parodying musicals. They do it in such a subtle way, and I love that about the movie. The movie also feels very small. Definitely, it had to be an indie movie because it feels very small. There's not much of an ensemble to this movie. I will say something that I did like is there's not much choreography in this movie, but when there is choreography, it's very greatly appreciated. The choreography that's in this movie is absolutely astounding. There's this one scene where Jamie is just singing in the street, and all these dancers just start dancing with him, and it's awesome to watch. Just an awesome sequence overall, guys. Just because of how overjoyed he is, you just go with it. Again, you just go with things. You don't question things because you go with it. If you just didn't know what this is gonna be, you know this is gonna be a sun through musical, and you know that there's gonna be some very heartbreaking parts in the end. But don't get me wrong, guys. It can be a fun movie. There are some parts that are a lot of fun to watch. It just ends in an extremely depressing way. It's not depressing in the fact that you never want to watch it again. In fact, guys, after I watched this movie, I wanted to watch it again. I did. But that's just me. That's because I love musicals. But I have a feeling that you guys, after you watch this, you're probably going to want to watch it again. That's just because of how good this movie is and how much influence this movie and how much this movie will influence you and how much it'll get you into the story. And that's something that this movie did for me. It got me into the story of the relationship. That's why I felt so much. That's why I felt so bad for them. That's why I felt so happy for them when we saw those happy moments. That's why I felt so bad for them when the relationship was falling apart. Because I was so into their relationship. And again, guys, there are some hard scenes to watch, definitely. And they're not hard as in like violent. They're hard because you know where it's going to lead to. You know what it's going to lead to. You know what's going to happen to them, and it's very hard to watch. Especially the hardest scene I'd say to watch in the movie is the scene with Jamie towards the end of the movie. It's like his big song. Absolutely hard to watch. Like I literally could not watch. There was a part where I'm like, I don't know if I can watch the scene. It's just so hard to watch, and it seems weird, but it is. It's hard to watch. But other than that, guys, I loved the last 5 years. I highly, highly recommend you guys check out this movie. If you guys want to see a good musical, if you guys are upset by some of the recent musical adaptations, check this movie out because I know that musical theater fans like myself who love Broadway are overjoyed by this movie. This is very close to the Broadway musical. They haven't changed anything. They respected the source material. They knew what they were doing. They had a director who was passionate about the project and who knew the musical and knew the story and knew what to do with the movie. And he knew how to have emotional parts in there. He knew how to have comedic parts in there. He had two extremely talented actors who basically he had two extremely talented actors who knew what they were doing, who are classically trained, who were on Broadway. And the only thing I will say about this movie is there are a few cameos. I don't want to give them away. Absolutely hilarious. The cameos in this movie were very, very funny, and I love the cameos in this movie. But other than that, guys, that's it for my review of the last 5 years. I'd like to talk about this movie for 30 minutes. I'd love to go on like a 30-minute review on this movie, but there's not really much else to say about this movie other than I absolutely loved it, guys. Highly, highly recommend you guys check out this movie. Please, please rent this movie. Just please give it the love it deserves because it deserves a lot of love. I'm definitely gonna probably watch this like 5 or 6 more times. I could definitely see that happening. That always happens to me with musicals. I watch them like a lot more than I think I am, and I think this movie's gonna be like that. I own it. I want you guys to know that I didn't rent this movie. I bought it. $15. I bought it. I'm like I am buying this movie because I knew I was gonna love it. I knew I was gonna love it, and if you go in with high expectations, you're gonna come out happy. You are. And that's it for my review. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you guys saw this movie. If you have seen it, please see it if you haven't. And I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for Rain. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.